She was a household name in Britain, a TV presenter whose roles included fronting a weekly show solving the nation's worst crimes. Jill Dando, who started her career as a journalist on local newspapers and radio and hailed from England's West Country, was one of the hosts of UK Crimewatch. Alongside presenter Nick Ross, she helped police highlight unsolved crimes across Britain, with the TV appeals regularly solving horrific cases. The general public absolutely loved Jill, and when she was killed, the country mourned like they did when Princess Diana passed away. Hello and welcome back to Crime, Mystery and Mayhem with Kate. If this is your first visit to my channel, hello, welcome. It is great to have you here. Here on my channel, I talk about true crime stories. I find them interesting and I'm quite intrigued as to why some people do the horrific things that they do. Please remember to like this video and to subscribe to my YouTube channel because it would really help me in my attempts to grow my channel. I cannot do this without you guys. Alright, so today I will be talking about the death of Jill Dando. So let's jump into today's story. Jill Wendy Dando was born on the 9th of November 1961. She was born in Weston-super-Mare in Somerset, England. She was the daughter of Jack Dando and Winifred Mary. Sadly, her mum actually went on to, she got cancer and passed away. She had an older brother called Nigel who would also go on to work in journalism. So when Jill was about 3 years old, it was discovered that she had a hole in her heart and a blocked pulmonary artery and she had to have heart surgery. But Jill recovered and she was able to live a full life. She also did very well in school and she was the head girl. She also completed all her A levels. She was super intelligent, this girl. She then went on to study journalism at the South Glamorgan Institute of Higher Education. Jill was a member of the Weston-super-Mare Amateur Dramatic Society and Exeter Little Theatre Company, where she appeared in plays. Cool. She was in plays. She was also a volunteer at Sunshine Hospital Radio in Weston-super-Mare in 1979. Jill's first job was as a trainee reporter for the local weekly newspaper, the Western Mercury, where her dad and brother actually also worked. After 5 years as a print journalist, she started to work for the BBC, becoming a newsreader for BBC Radio Devon in 1985. So she's just doing so well. She's doing so well. She's thriving. That year, she transferred to BBC Southwest, where she presented a regional news magazine program, Spotlight Southwest. Then in 1987, she worked for Television Southwest, then BBC Spotlight in Plymouth. In early 1988, Jill moved from regional to national television in London to present BBC television news, specifically the short on the hour bulletins that aired on both BBC One and BBC Two from 1986 until the mid-1990s. She presented the BBC television programs Breakfast Time, Breakfast News, the BBC 1 o'clock, the 6 o'clock news, the travel program Holiday, the crime appeal series Crimewatch, and occasionally Songs of Praise. She was a busy lady. This lady was constantly working. She was so hardworking. In 1994, she moved to Fulham, and on the 25th of April 1999, Jill presented the first episode of Antiques Inspectors. Jill was among the highest profile of the BBC's on-screen staff and had been the 1997 BBC Personality of the Year. From 1989 to 1996, Jill was in a relationship with BBC executive Bob Wheaton. In December of 1997, Jill went out on a blind date. So yeah, that relationship with Bob Wheaton, it ended, and apparently it didn't end very well, but we won't get into that. In December of 97, Jill went on that blind date with a guy that a friend had set up. So it was actually a mutual friend of both of theirs. And they hit it off. He was gynecologist Alan Farthing, who was actually Queen Elizabeth's personal physician. Alan was separated from his wife at the time, and a couple of months after his divorce was finalized, him and Jill announced that they were engaged. So they announced this on the 31st of January of 1999. On the morning of April the 26th, 1999, 37-year-old Jill left Alan's home. So she'd been staying at Alan's home like a lot. She was heading to her own house to collect some contract documents which had been faxed to her by her agent. By the time April 1999 came along, she was in the process of actually selling her house because she was spending all of her time at Alan's. And they were getting married. There really wasn't any point her keeping a house that she wasn't using. When Jill arrived home, she walked up the path. So she's heading towards her front door. As Jill was about to put her keys in the lock to open the door, she was grabbed from behind. With his right arm, the assailant held her and forced her to the ground, so that her face was almost touching the tiled step on her porch. Then, with his left hand, he fired a single shot at her left temple, which sadly killed Jill instantly. The bullet entered her head just above her ear, parallel to the ground, and came out the right side of her head. Her body was discovered pretty quickly, about 14 minutes later, by neighbour Helen Doble, and police were called at 11:47 a.m. Jill was rushed to the hospital, but she was declared deceased on arrival. A forensic study indicated that Jill had been shot by a bullet from a 9mm short caliber semi-automatic pistol, with the gun pressed against her head at the moment of the shoot. That's how we know this. The cartridge appeared to be modified, possibly to reduce its charge. Richard Hughes, her next door neighbour, heard a scream that came from Jill's property and said that he thought maybe someone surprised someone and, they got a fright. Well, yeah, that's kind of what happened, but not in a good way. He said that he did not hear a gunshot. Richard looked out his front window, and while not realizing what had happened, he made the only certain sighting of the killer. This was a 6-foot-tall white man aged around 40, and he was walking away from Jill Dando's house. After Jill was killed, there was intense media coverage. I mean, she works for BBC, so there's going to be a crazy amount. The media were reporting on one of their own, so it was really hard for them. An investigation by the Metropolitan Police named Operation Oxbow proved fruitless for over a year. They had no leads. They did not know who did this. Jill's status as a well-known public figure had brought her into contact with thousands of people, and she was known to millions. There was huge speculation regarding the motive for killing her. Within 6 months, the murder investigation team had spoken to more than 2,500 people and taken more than 1,000 statements. Sorry, I'm kind of strangling myself a little bit with this shirt. Oh. With little progress after a year, the police concentrated their attention on a guy called Barry George. He lived about a half-mile away from Jill. He had a history of stalking women, essays, and other antisocial and attention-seeking behaviour. So he didn't have the best record. So they're looking at him and they're thinking, oh yeah, this must be our guy. Barry was put under surveillance, then he was arrested. So Barry was arrested on the 25th of May in the year 2000, and he was actually charged with Jill Dando's murder on the 28th of May. They really did not have much to say that it was him. Barry was tried at the Old Bailey. He was convicted, and on the 2nd of July 2001, he was sentenced to life imprisonment. Concern about this conviction was widespread on the basis that the case against Barry appeared very thin. 2 appeals were unsuccessful, but after discredited forensic evidence was excluded from the prosecutor's case, his 3rd appeal succeeded in November of 2007. So he's actually spent 8 years in prison. The original conviction was quashed, and a second trial that lasted 8 weeks ended in Barry's acquittal on the 1st of August 2008. After his acquittal, some newspapers published articles which appeared to suggest that he was guilty of killing Jill and other offences against women. In December of 2009, Barry accepted a substantial amount of damages money from news group newspapers over articles in The Sun and the News of the World following a libel action in the High Court. So he took them to court because they were talking wrongly about him. He did 8 years for a crime he did not commit. Some lines of inquiry explored in the police investigation included maybe a jealous ex-boyfriend or an unknown lover had killed Jill. This was quickly ruled out though, because the detectives who interviewed Jill's friends and acquaintances, and they checked her phone and whatnot, so they ruled that out. They also thought that somebody had hired a hitman to kill her as like revenge for them maybe being convicted as a result of evidence gathered by Crimewatch viewers, but this was also ruled out. Then there was maybe a deranged fan who killed her after, maybe he tried to ask her out or something and she rejected him. Jill's brother Nigel told detectives that she had become concerned by a guy that was pestering her. So apparently this guy was stalking her, and in the few days before her death, this guy was following her, but the detectives ruled this one out. I'm not sure why, but they did. Then the cops thought maybe it was a case of mistaken identity. This was judged unlikely given that the killing took place on the doorstep of her own home. Apparently, following the Jimmy Savile essay scandal, a claim was made that Jill Dando investigated a pedophile ring at the BBC during the mid-1990s and had handed over her findings to BBC management. So the police, they thought that maybe that would be enough motive for someone to want to kill her, but the BBC said it had seen no evidence to support this claim, so that was ruled out. Actions taken by a professional rival or business partner also had to be considered. So it's always possible. Jill's agent was actually also interviewed by the police. The original police investigation had explored the possibility of a contract killing. But since Jill was living with her fiance and was only very rarely going to her own house, this was considered unlikely that a professional assassin would have been sufficiently well informed about her movements to have known at what time she was going to be at her own home. Like, if it was an assassin, you'd think that they would kill her at her fiance's house. So yeah, that was ruled out. CCTV evidence of Jill when she was heading to her house, her last journey, mainly security video recordings from a shopping centre which she visited on her way, didn't show any sign of her being followed. Initial investigations focused on her personal circle, since only a few people actually knew of her intention to go to her house on that day. Her agent was an initial suspect, since he knew that she was going to be there because she was collecting the faxes he'd sent her, but he was able to convince the detectives that he was innocent. Bob Wheaton also attracted attention, since he was a jilted lover and Jill had transferred £35,000 to him towards the end of their relationship. But Bill said that this transfer was apparently a gift and it wasn't a loan, and he also convinced detectives of his innocence. I'm not sure why she sent that money over to him, but yeah, We can speculate. On the night of her death, Jill's BBC colleague Nick Ross said on Newsnight that attacks of retaliation by criminals against police, lawyers and judges were almost unknown in the UK. It can happen, and it has happened, but it's not as common. Forensic examination of the cartridge case and bullet recovered from the scene of the attack suggested that the weapon used had been the result of a workshop conversion of a replica or a decommissioned gun, and it was argued that a professional assassin would not use such a poor quality weapon. So the police soon began to favour the idea that the killing had been random and that it was maybe carried out by a crazed individual. This assumed profile of the perpetrator led to the focus on Barry George, the guy that I spoke about who went to prison. Cold case reviews by the police after 2008 concluded that Jill was killed by a professional assassin in a hard contact execution. Pressing the gun against her head would have acted as a suppressor, muffling the sound of the shot and preventing the killer from being splattered with blood. So someone who knew what they were doing. In early 1999, the UK and NATO were involved in the Kosovo War, opposing Serbia. Immediately after Jill Dando was killed, a number of calls were made to the BBC and also other media outlets claiming responsibility for killing Jill on behalf of Serb groups. These calls said that it was revenge for the NATO bombing campaign in Serbia, and they threatened further killings. These calls were not judged wholly credible and may have been hoaxes. But you can never be too careful, right? Nevertheless, at Barry George's final trial, his lawyer proposed that the Serbian warlord Arkin had ordered Jill's assassination in retaliation for the NATO bombing of the RTS headquarters. He suggested that Jill's earlier presentation of an appeal for aid for refugees may have attracted their attention. So Jill Dando's appeal for aid had been shown on TV just 3 weeks before she was killed. So, possible, but I don't think so. In 2019, it was reported that the British National Criminal Intelligence Service, so the NCIS, had given an intelligence report to Jill's murder inquiry claiming that the killing was in retaliation for the RTS bombing and Arkin had ordered the killing. So the report highlighted a possible connection between the bullet used to kill Jill and bullets used in assassinations in Germany, which had handmade markings found on them. Another journalist was actually assassinated outside of his house just a few days before Jill. And the method that was used in both of these cases were identical. So maybe? And in 2019, 4 men of the Serbian Secret Service were actually convicted of that other journalist's killing. So maybe. Jill Dando's funeral took place on the 21st of May 1999 at Clarence Park Baptist Church, and she was buried next to her mum in the town's Ebden Road Cemetery. Her dad went on to inherit all of her estate, which was valued at $607,000 back in 1999. So imagine what that is now. Jill's co-presenter, Nick Ross, proposed the formation of an academic institute in her name, and together with her fiance, Alan, they were able to raise almost $1.5 million. The Jill Dando Institute of Crime Science was founded at University College London on the 26th of April 2001, which was the 2nd anniversary of her death. A memorial garden designed and realised by they designed a garden, the BBC did, and they put it in Jill Dando's memory, which is quite nice. They used plants that Jill liked, colours that were her favourite, and it's located within Grove Park, and it was opened on the 2nd of August 2001. The BBC set up a bursary award in Jill's memory, which enables one student each year to study broadcast journalism at University College. Sophie Long, who was then a postgraduate, is now a presenter on BBC News, and she actually gained the first bursary award in the year 2000. In 2007, Western College opened a new university campus on the site of the former Broadoak Sixth Form Centre, where Jill actually studied. This sixth form building has been dedicated to her and named the Jill Dando Centre. Jill was just 37 when she died, and she was 5 months away from getting married. Alan were writing wedding invitations the night before she died. It's been 25 years now since she was killed, and we still don't know who did it. But maybe, more importantly, why they did it. Why would someone go up to Jill and do what they did? We don't know. So it would be nice to have some closure from that point of view, to know why that person pulled the trigger that day and why he chose Jill. Maybe the killer is out there and wants to clear their conscience. Possibly, maybe. Everyone has a conscience, right? Maybe not. Some people don't. Even after all these years, maybe, just maybe, they might come forward to confess about what they did. Maybe get it off their chest. Jill's death caused shockwaves that have lasted years. But what makes the case even more extraordinary is that it remains unsolved. Police still don't know who did it, despite it having been one of the most high-profile crimes of the 1990s. There's pressure in high-profile cases to find the perpetrator, and sometimes they get the wrong person, and the wrong person is convicted, like Barry. There were no hard leads, and this led to the wrong man being sent to prison, while the real criminal still walks the streets, if they're still alive. The last time Nigel Dando saw his little sister Jill was on Easter weekend, and he said it was a nice sunny day. They had a yummy lunch, and Nigel remembers that he, Jill, their father, and Jill's fiance Alan went for a walk. While they were walking, Jill was arm in arm with Alan, tramping through the countryside near the family home. Jill had a large smile on her face. She was so happy. She was getting married in just 5 months, and the talk was all about that. Her plans, how excited she was. It's all they could talk about. This family was so excited. She was just so happy. There was to be a big white wedding, a church in Putney, southwest London, followed by a reception at Claridge Hotel, attended by many of Jill's famous colleagues from the BBC. Jill had written the guest list, where she also noted dates of dress fittings and an appointment with the person that was going to be designing her invitations. She had even started jotting down ideas in her speech. Next to her to-do list was the honeymoon, for which Jill had plenty of ideas. Remember she did that program Holiday, the travel program Holiday. So she had loads of ideas of places that she might want to go for her honeymoon. She was just so pleased and so delighted that she was getting married to the man that she loved. She loved Alan so much. They were so good together. This is what her friends and family are saying. They had an instant attraction, and they shared the same sense of humour. They just worked. Nigel, Jill's brother, said that it was lovely for his dad and for him to know that Jill was so happy. A lot of her friends had settled down and they had families. And at 37, she was looking forward to her own adventures, maybe children. For Britain's Golden Girl, happiness was truly on the horizon. She'd had some pretty crappy past boyfriends. This was her time. This was going to be her forever after. She was so excited. But just 3 weeks later, Jill was dead. Shot in broad daylight outside her own home in a brutal attack by an unknown gunman who nearly 25 years later still has not been caught. So instead of a wedding, 100 close friends and family, the very same names that were in Jill's wedding guest list, joined 2,000 mourners gathered at the family church to say goodbye. Not a wedding, a funeral. That's so sad. Wow. Okay, so that is today's story about Jill Dando. I actually watched the documentary on Netflix about Jill. So they're looking at everything. They looked at everything. I highly recommend, if you're interested in this case, maybe go watch the doco on Netflix. I think it's called Who Killed Jill Dando. It's really, really interesting to watch. Yeah, I took a few points from there. So yeah, it was a really good watch. It's just so sad. She was, getting ready to get married. She's happy. Sucks when shitty things happen to good people, right? Okay, so that's me for today. I hope everyone is doing well. It's nearly Easter. How the hell did that happen? Honestly, didn't we literally just have Christmas? And it's going to be like April before we know it. My son is 3 next week. I feel like I was pregnant like yesterday, or just gave birth yesterday, but he's 3 next week. How the heck did that happen? My daughter's going to be 18 at her next birthday. What? That makes me feel old actually, but I was pretty young when I had her. Teenagers having kids, I do not recommend it. Anyway, I hope you guys are doing well. I will leave it there and I will talk to you another day. Please remember to like and subscribe. It always helps me out. I am loving the support I am getting. It's great. All right, I'll catch you later. Bye.